Information Security by Rachel Vibert. The topics of my presentation today are to answer what is information security, to talk a little bit about the history and the CIA triad, talk about some threats and controls to information, defense in depth, and some employment. So what is information security? Information security, or InfoSec, is the practice of preventing unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, inspection, recording, or destruction of information. So basically, it's protecting your information from anything that you don't want. Information can take any form. It can be physical, so like your physical computer or physical handwritten information, or it can be electronic, which would be data saved in your computer or in a data center. Some history. Since the early times, information has been very valuable, and therefore it has been needed to be protected. And so some ways in which people have done that throughout history is when a message is being transported, only a trusted advisor or a trusted person would be able to transport or even see that message. This is to ensure that the message does not get into the hands of the wrong person. And in the 19th century, coded messages became more advanced. This was especially helpful in war because their enemies were no longer able to steal their information as easily. And information security over the internet became necessary since the invention of the internet. And information security has become information security over the internet has become a lot more important because of how widely used the internet is by millions and millions of people. The CIA triad is an information security benchmark model used to evaluate the information security of an organization. So an organization will use the three equally important key areas: confidentiality, availability, and integrity, in order to evaluate their security. Confidentiality is the property that information is not made available or disclosed to unauthorized individuals, entities, or processes. So basically, this means that the information does not get into the hands of the wrong person. Only authorized individuals are able to see this information. And that personal information should only be seen or used for the agreed upon purpose, meaning that even an authorized person who just feels like looking at the data that day can't do it. They have to be using it for the agreed upon purpose. And some examples of this would be passwords or encryptions would be used for confidentiality because both of those things are in place to make sure that people who are not authorized to see the information cannot see the information. Integrity means maintaining and assuring the accuracy and completeness of data over its entire life cycle. So that means that when data is being stored or when data is being transmitted, wherever the data is, integrity means that it stays the same and it stays the way the original sender of the information wanted it to be. Data should be protected through access controls, and there should be an accepted procedure to change the stored or transmitted data. An example of these access controls would be hashes on data. So basically what it means is that when they have the original information, they calculate a hash for the information. And then after the information is transmitted, the receiver of the information recalculates that hash. And if they are the same, then that's good. But if there's any differences, then the information is no good, because that means it was altered in some way during the transmission process. Availability is to make sure that the services of an organization are available. So this very valuable information means nothing unless the people who are intended to see it can see it. And so sometimes service disruptions happen. So like an example of a service disruption would be a website crash. And service disruptions can be caused also by power outages, hardware failures, and system upgrades. So there's many reasons why the service disruptions would happen, but the availability means that implement something to make sure that this information can be available. An example of that is alternate sites. Some threats to information are software attacks, and a good example of software attacks would be a virus. Theft of intellectual property. As I have already stated, information is so valuable, and so stealing of that information is a big deal. Identity theft, which is basically obtaining someone's vital information for financial gain. And information extortion, which is stealing someone's information and requiring a payment for returning the information. Controls protect the CIA of the information. So basically, controls are put into place to protect against the threats that I showed you in my last slide. Administrative controls are basically procedures and policies that are put into place to guide employee actions in dealing with an organization's sensitive information. So, and government laws or policies can be administrative controls. So administrative controls are basically rules that try to prevent bad things from happening. An example of an administrative control would be a policy that states that any computers without an antivirus software cannot connect to the network. This policy basically is trying to prevent a virus from coming into the network by not allowing any computers that do not have protection against viruses to connect to the network. So it's a preventatory measure. Logical or technical controls use software and data to monitor and control access to information and computing systems. So basically, it's logical or technical controls make sure that people who are not supposed to see the information cannot see the information. It can be in the form of hardware or software. And some good examples are passwords and data encryption, because as I said earlier, both of those things are used to prevent anyone who's not supposed to see the information from seeing the information. Physical controls are means and devices to control physical access to sensitive information and to protect the availability of the information. So basically, physical controls are trying to protect against somebody stealing files or your physical computer in order to get the data. And ways that companies can protect against this would be guards or receptionists, physical security systems, or separation of duties to ensure that one person does not have access to too much information. Defense in depth uses multiple levels of security. The strategy is based on the principle that it is more difficult for an enemy to defeat a complex and multi-layered defense system than to penetrate a single barrier. So basically, if a hacker just had to get through one security barrier, it would be a lot easier for him than if he had to get through many complex security barriers. This is helpful to identify a hacker because it takes time to penetrate through all these levels of security. So in that time, hopefully the organization can pinpoint and identify the hacker. Administrative, logical, and physical controls are the building blocks to the layers of security. There should be an administrative control, a logical control, and a physical control, all so that all levels are addressed. And finally, employment/jobs. The value of an organization relies in its information, so that's why so many organizations have been implementing security teams in order to protect themselves. A lot of times, the security teams will consist of a chief information security officer, security engineers, information security analyst, or an IT security consultant. They are in charge of risk management, which means that threats must be continuously assessed and addressed. They're in charge of implementing security controls. So after assessing their threats, they must put in place controls in order to combat them. And then they must come up with an incident response plan and just in case something bad goes wrong, they must have a plan in place to figure out what they should do. These are my sources, and thank you for watching my video.